What's it like growing up in Alaska? What's up, man?
What's going on?
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
I'm Chris.
David.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing Mentor Monday.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have you watched any of these videos?
I have seen them.
Perfect, so you kind of know how the flow goes. The goal for me is like always to just kind of have a conversation, right? Like don't feel any pressure like you have to ask certain questions or anything like that. Like the real goal is for you to just be able to ask me anything under the sun and then us just kind of chat about it and hopefully, you know, give some answers or give something worthwhile, you know what I mean? So with that being said, why don't we start by just give me a breakdown of like who you are, where you're from, what you're working on, like that sort of thing.
Got you. So I'm David Bullock. I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska before I went to school at Howard University out in DC.
Wow.
So when I was out there, I started throwing parties and started managing people's social media.
Yep.
Since then, I left school to go on tour with Kanye on the Pablo tour. And after that, people started hitting me up like, hey, can you do this marketing? Can you do this consulting? So I started my own company called the 907 Agency.
Dope. What were you doing for Kanye?
So I wasn't actually working for Kanye. I managed his cousin, who's written and sang on all of his albums, the world famous Tony Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was working for him.
That's great.
We were traveling. It was fun.
That's really cool. And then so since you've been back, it's just been like craziness.
Yeah. So when you meet somebody wearing a Kanye West badge, they're pretty inclined to connect with you.
Yeah.
But so when I was actually on the tour, I met a lot of people that are in tech.
Yep.
And it kind of clicked with me to not just work in music, but to be able to educate people on music and how the music industry works because I learned something new every single day.
Yeah.
So my best friend from Alaska and myself started an app together to where we're it's a music industry simulation game. So we're teaching people about the music industry in a fun way.
That's really cool. And when did you launch that?
It hasn't been launched yet.
Yeah.
So we've been working on it for the last year,
Got it.
and so far we've had interest from literally like the top tech companies out. So we're just going through those meetings and those discussions before we launch it.
That's really cool. And when would you like to launch it?
Probably in the next couple months.
Really cool. Okay, man, fire away. Ask me anything that's on your mind, anything at all. Let's just chat.
Right. So the first thing is just like how you introduced yourself as Chris, but like growing up on TV and everything, I always saw you as Drama. Yeah. For myself, it's kind of funny because sometimes my name is David, sometimes it's Alaska because that's just what a lot of people call me. So how do you make that change between which name you're going to be when? Like how do you do that?
Yeah. So for me, like that's been like something that's transitioned more as I got older. So like, you know, when I was younger, I would always introduce myself as Drama all the time because that's what like everyone knew me as, right? And I think that like, you know, I was also, when you're like 25, 26, it's a little cooler, right? I just think that like as I've gotten older, you know, I'm 31 now, I think like naturally it just feels a little bit more normal in like these sort of settings to just say my real name. So it really depends, man. Like I change it depending on who I'm talking to. Like if I think that I'm talking to like a younger person that only like is coming up to me because they knew me from the show or maybe from my social media or stuff like that, then I'll just say Drama. But in a normal like sit down scenario, I always say Chris. But it just transitioned for me as I got older.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And even with rebranding and everything, so initially, like I said, I started off throwing parties. Then after I was throwing parties, then I started managing people's social media. But then like when I started to work with more artists and influencers and brands and everything, people would still identify me with the parties that I've thrown and everything. So I know even for yourself, you've done everything from like selling frozen burritos,
Yeah.
just a whole bunch of different things. I mean, obviously Young and Reckless, you're clearly on the show and on all these different shows.
Yeah.
So when you're making this transition, like how do you do these different rebrands and what do you typically have to sacrifice when you're doing these things?
Yeah, I think that like, you know, it's really important to stay really focused and clear on like what you want to do and like where you're going, right? Because nothing else really matters. And I think it's important to like take into consideration maybe the relationships that you've built or the brand that you've built or the following that you've built doing other things. But if your heart isn't in that, or like for me, I knew that I couldn't continue to build a reality TV persona, right? Because I wasn't going to go like do my own shows or anything like that. So even though in the beginning of kind of making this transition, it was tough because it feels like the world keeps telling you you're doing the wrong thing, you know, because like you're losing followers and you're losing like people that know you from this one thing, and they're like, what the hell is this? I didn't sign up for this, right? But it's like you have to just make up your mind in your own sort of heart where you want to go and stick to that no matter what. And I think through that process, I learned a really valuable lesson that it doesn't matter if you had something built before or you're starting from scratch. The key is to stay laser focused on where you're going and not let any outside voices take you off of that path, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the only one who knows, you're the only one who has the vision. And a lot of times you might sit down and explain it to someone and they might be like, oh, I don't know, man, that's gonna be really hard to accomplish. And then sure enough, when you do, everyone's calling you, everyone's coming up to you, everyone's telling you how much you're killing it, you know? And that took a while for me. That took, especially the big transition between like from being on TV to now kind of having my personal brand built and doing all this content and podcasts and stuff. It took like 2 years of people telling me I was doing the wrong thing and nothing was connecting until all of a sudden people started calling me and saying, bro, you're killing it. That's so cool what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, because I went through the like torture to do it, you know, but you just got to make up your mind, you know, take into consideration what your starting point is, what your audience is, all that stuff. And then once you decide, just focus on that and don't let any outside noises like take you off of that path, you know? So important.
So for myself, even like I said, like when I started off throwing parties and everything, when I stopped throwing those parties to start pursuing these other things, I did that because I didn't want to be known as Alaska the promoter.
Yeah.
So like that really just bothered me because like just like with yourself, like I'm sure like when you were on TV and everything, no matter whatever else you did, they were just like, oh yeah, that's drama from the TV show.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that just bothered the life out of you. Yeah. So with this, like when I stopped throwing parties, that was like my main livelihood at that time. Yeah. So when I stopped doing that, like I decided like, cool, let me make this sacrifice because it's worth it. Yeah. So I just dropped throwing parties and everything, just cold turkey. Yeah. But with this case, like, what was the biggest like sacrifice that you've made with that whole change?
You know, I think for me it was more like, you know, because the way my story went was I did reality TV time. I launched multiple companies and brands and stuff, but Young and Reckless is the one that really worked better than anything else. And so luckily for me, I was financially sound, right? And so I didn't have to really risk anything financially or risk wondering where I was going to pay my rent the next day. I think that the biggest thing was I was rapidly losing followers and losing engagement and I know that in social media age that can kind of sound like, oh, who cares, you're losing Instagram followers, but for me that's also who I'm marketing to with my clothing, right? So I'm doing Facebook targeting, Instagram targeting, all that stuff all day long for Young and Reckless, and when you start to see those numbers falling so quickly, you're like, oh shit, like eventually at a certain point I'm going to stop connecting to the core of my audience for the product that I sell, and then I could potentially get into some real trouble, right? But I just knew that this was something that I could actually build on, and once I did it, it would be so much stronger than before, because the way I see it is, you know, it doesn't matter if I had like 1 million followers from before of reality TV, right? That's not really me or like my thing. So it was only so valuable. So in my mind, having 100,000 people that are truly engaged and truly supporting what I'm putting out now is more valuable than having 1 million that are just kind of supporting like this MTV show. You know what I mean? So it was worth it for me to do it. But that was, I think, the biggest sacrifice was just you see your following going down and you see engagement go down and you see all these things, and those are all the natural things that tell you you're doing the wrong thing, you know, but you just have to play the long game, and it ended up, you know, paying off.
Right. So when you got that tunnel vision and decided like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do, like this is what I want to lock in on and focus on, at what point in time did you decide like this is what success will be, or like this is what success will look like? Yeah. Like, because I've come to find that it's more so about the journey and really just stopping to smell those roses and everything, as opposed to any one destination. So for you, like when was it that you decided like this is what success is, this is what success will be?
Yeah, for me, like, to be honest, the best way that I can describe success is being able to like be financially sound while you're chasing the next vision. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see success as retiring on a beach somewhere, because I honestly think after, I don't even know if I could make it a month, but let's just say a month of literally just sitting on a beach and drinking mimosas and like chilling out and being rich, I think you would lose your mind. Like, you naturally need something to pursue, but you don't want to be pursuing that next thing out of fear of paying your next bill, right? And obviously that's just what happens for so long. That's part of the game, right? But for me, the ultimate success is being financially sound, not having to have those worries, while also having a clear vision for what I even want to do tomorrow, and something that when I wake up in the morning I'm excited about, and it's not finished yet. It's not even close to being finished yet, but it's growing. You know, like, that's how I feel about my podcast, right? Like, I started this podcast 2 years ago, and now I started another one with my business partner, and I'm far from making any money off of podcasting, or really it showing any immediate return, but it's growing, and it's something to focus on, and it's something to always try to get better guests and figure out how to be a better interviewer and connect with people better. And you see the difference when sometimes I'll be out walking around now and people will come up to me and say, hey, I love this episode of your podcast, or this one thing that somebody said really changed my life, or blah, blah, blah. And those are the types of things that I think really make a difference. Like, that's when I go home at night and I'm like, man, this is good. Like, I'm on to something, but for me, it's very much so like taking, not having any super large fear of bills or anything like that, and having a very clear goal to chase,
So for that 2 year period where you had that whole in-between stage between you deciding this is the vision you want to go ahead and attack,
yeah,
and you finally starting to achieve that success and everything, how did you overcome that fear or that rejection that all these people were essentially kind of just hating on you or didn't see the vision that you saw? Like, how'd you stick with it for 2 years?
I think I just developed a mentality, and don't get me wrong, it's easy to sit here now and say like, oh, I just did this. But I want to be honest, like, in the beginning, it sucked, and it felt like things just weren't right, like nothing was connecting. It felt super terrible. But I think I just came to a point where I realized, what other option do you really have, right? All you can really do is something that you believe in, feel good about, and see a future in, right? So anything else that I was doing was just sitting wishing things were different, and that just doesn't lead you anywhere at all. You're just going to take away time from focusing on the thing that mattered. And I think I've been in like this world long enough to look back and say, every time when I was second guessing myself, I never came up with a better answer. All I was doing was taking time away from what I knew I should have been doing anyway. So it's just a longer way of getting to the same place where you're going to go anyway. So it's like, I just at a certain point shut off my brain and said, there is logically no other answer. So why take any time away from anything else, and just put all effort at all times into doing this stuff right, and just speed up the process, right? Because it's either that or complain or go get a job somewhere, right? Like, those are your options. Either attack the thing that you believe in, sit at home and complain, or go work at Starbucks. You have to choose one. There's no free bailout or free, you know what I mean? You can play the lottery a lot, but that's probably not going to work. It's like, you've got to just do that thing.
No, I definitely hate gambling. That's actually one of the things I've definitely sticking with.
Yeah, man, I've been playing poker on my iPhone, and it's been driving me nuts. There's no money even involved. I just hate losing.
I play blackjack.
Yeah, there you go.
But no. So even as far as fears and everything, do you have any fears now? Or because I feel like most people fear rejection, but I don't really care about rejection too much anymore. Yeah. Or I don't really care about people not seeing what I see, because things have been working out. But I could, like, before, I didn't have the same level of confidence. But are there any fears that you still have, even though you've already gone through so many different things?
Yeah, I think, just like anyone else, I have a million of them. And I think, on small levels, like, nobody likes rejection and nobody likes whatever. But to be honest with you, I think that my biggest fear is, like, one day being, like, 70 years old and honestly knowing in my head or saying to myself that I could have done more had it not been for all those stupid distractions and worrying what people thought and worrying, you know what I mean? Like, I think about that a lot, and it pops up into my head a lot of like, I'm okay with trying everything that I know how to try and failing, and one day being 70 and saying, damn, you failed. I just don't want to have that feeling of like, you knew what to do. Like, you knew you could have done more and you just didn't because you couldn't turn off like the negative in your brain. You know, I think that's the thing that like the fear that really like pushes me a lot.
Right.
What's it like growing up in Alaska?
Honestly, growing up in Alaska is just like growing up in any other city. Alaska has, like, we're twice the size of Texas. We're the biggest state, but we have less than 1 million people.
Yeah, that's the part that I think. I know the size, but it's the lack of people. And isn't it like dark, like for like long periods of time?
So in Anchorage, where I'm from, it's pretty normal, except for in the middle of June. So from like June 15th to the 21st, like the sun never goes down.
Got it. Only for that time?
Yeah. So like the sky will just be like, it'll just turn like a little bit pink, like it'll be like the sunset, but then the sun will come right back. So.
That's crazy. Is there like a name for that time period? Like, do you have any like slang name?
It's the summer solstice.
Got it. But is that, you guys just call it that? You don't say like, oh, it's fucking sun week. Man, I feel like that'd be like a good time to celebrate. Like, I don't know what you do, but
The thing is too is like between that whole time, like the sun is just gradually changing. So so even when the sun does go down, it'll just go down for a little bit. But it really sucks in the wintertime because like every morning before we go to school, it'd be like -8 degrees outside, and like the sun will only be up for like maybe like 6 hours some days. So when you go to school, it'll be -8 degrees outside. So you're super cold, which already puts you in a bad mood, and it's dark. Then you go to school, and by the time you come back home from school, by like 4 o'clock, the sun will be down again. And it'll be like,
oh, what a nightmare. That's my worst nightmare.
yeah, so we're actually second in the nation with depression behind Seattle, and it's probably because of that, like the lack of sun and everything.
You must love LA then.
Oh my god.
LA's like just like, why am I so happy?
No, I love LA. So like I said, like when I was on the tour and everything, when I was on the tour, we were traveling across North America. Then we came out here to LA because there were like 6 shows in LA or something like that. So when I was out here, I was just living out here for a couple weeks, and I was like, yo, LA is crazy. Like this is great, and like everybody that you meet is like cool people. Like this person works for Nike, this person works for Adidas, this person does this person does that. You run Young and Reckless and have done all these different things, and these are just normal people out here. So
that's the thing that I remember got me the most, like coming from Ohio, because in Ohio, I have to be careful because I get a lot of backlash for saying negative things. I don't mean this negatively, but like it's hard to run into people that are doing anything exciting, you know, and they're great people, and you might run into some great friends, but like you're not running into like a marketing person for Nike very often. And so I remember when I moved to LA, it was the same sort of thing. Like I just felt like everyone that I met was doing something or trying to do something. And that was like the thing that got me the most, you know, it was just like, this is just cool. Like when you live out here, you just feel like you have to be hustling and working on something because everyone else is, you know, super good.
So how'd that go for you? So after the show, when you're in that in-between period, the people back in Ohio that figured like, oh, like he's just on this certain level now because of the show or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you started to do something different, like how pessimistic were they based off of them not being able to see other people that were able to transcend their situation or to be able to go do new things? Like how pessimistic was everybody? Like, what is he trying to do? And he's trying to do something new.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that my perception of it is probably a little like skewed, you know, because it's my own sort of opinion. But the way that it felt to me was like there were people that just sort of believed in me or knew me, you know that I'm a hard worker, know that I'm a, you know, I can put a plan together, and they kind of believed that I could execute it, right? And then it seemed like there was a lot of people that had seen me succeed. Like, it's almost like you're on this reality show, and that's like cool and whatever, but as soon as you start to evolve out of that and grow out of that and like start Young and Reckless and that becomes really successful, I noticed a lot of people really didn't like that. And like that's where any of my like hate came from, or any of that stuff was nobody would really hate on the other people on the show who weren't doing anything outside of the show. But it's almost like as soon as you tried to grow outside of that, it was like, wait a minute, like check yourself, right? And so I think that when the show and that stuff ended and I started putting out a little bit of different content, it was probably all of those people's opportunity to like try to tear it down, you know, and be like, this isn't gonna work, you know, your podcast is stupid, or this content thing's stupid, or blah, 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 because that's like an easy, vulnerable moment to try to jump on and be like, haha, like he's gonna fail, you know? But now I don't really feel that. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, right now, I don't feel much hate or like backlash, you know, because I think it's just to the point where like if you follow what I'm doing and you watch what I'm doing,
it's gonna work sooner or later.
you're not really gonna hate on it, right? Like if you're taking the time to follow me, like talking with people on a podcast and like trying to honestly just genuinely give good advice or whatever. And I think that the people who did just super hate are long gone by now, you know? So it feels pretty peaceful, like in my world right now. Like it feels like it's working. All the people that are supporting me support me, and all the like crazy negativity just isn't really there. But it took a while to like get to that point, you know?
All right, so even when you're starting up your brand from literally from ground zero, can you tell me some things about influencer marketing, and when you were starting off with influencer marketing, and like the line between these influencers being your friends as opposed to like business partners and things when you were approaching that influencer marketing?
Yeah, because you know, here's the thing with me and influencer marketing. I've been doing it for a very long time, in the sense of like when all the Vine kids started blowing up, like we were kind of the first ones on them and giving them clothes, and Young and Reckless was all over Vine, and then a lot of those guys graduated, you know, Amanda Cerny and the Pauls and whatever, graduated to become like these YouTube superstars, and then a lot of the guys kind of faded, or guys and girls faded off into no man's land. But and then that's our plan has kind of evolved, like the way that we deal with influencers has evolved, and I'm still today trying to figure out the best way to deal with influencers. But the one things that I do know are, this is just how I am, unless someone just genuinely becomes a really good friend, I try to always separate that sort of business and friendship, right? Like I become really good friends with the people I work with because I'm with them every day. We like trust each other, we count on each other. Like that's a kind of a different thing. But with like people that you're doing marketing projects with, I never really get that close, because you know that at some point there's an exchange of either free clothes or money in order to support, and at a certain point that money is going to stop. And does that happen? I don't want anything to get weird, and I don't know. I just don't like to mix those two things. And then the other thing is that if the influencer doesn't fit the brand or the message or the whatever, it's literally completely pointless. Like you're just lighting money on fire. But if you find the influencer or multiple that fit the brand, fit the style, fit whatever you're trying to do, it will like explode. You know, it's polar opposites, and you can spend all the money in the world. If the influencer's fan base doesn't match your fan base, you're screwed. You know what I mean? So that's something that I always try to figure out, especially being in the apparel business. I'm dealing with like trends and fashion, and you know what I mean? Like it's different than just selling like headphones, you know? And so it's so important that that lines up, because you'll either get a home run or you'll just be dead in the water, you know?
Right. So as things have evolved from these different platforms, like when they started off like with Vine, like you were saying, and to how Instagram is probably like Instagram and YouTube are probably the most popular ones right now. So as those things have evolved, like even with your strategies evolution, has the ROI changed a lot, or has it stayed pretty similar based off the people that you've used, or how does that work?
Yeah, so like we have kind of a, you know, depending on the product, and the cool thing is like I'm dealing with selling a product, and I'm dealing with margins, and I'm dealing with those sort of things. And so the good thing is our sort of ROI expectations have never really changed, you know, or our goals have never really changed. It's just about how to keep meeting those goals. So like you can start doing Facebook, you know, targeting and hit your goal, but eventually that starts to die down, or something happens, gets oversaturated or something happens. So now it's like, okay, well, can we do Instagram influencers? Can we do swipe ups? Will that hit it? So then you start to hit it, you find these sweet spots, but nothing ever like stays. So it's constantly evolving, and I'm constantly talking to my other friends who are running businesses, and especially in my industry, and and doing targeting and doing influencers and doing all that stuff to see what they're doing or hear what they're doing. You know, they'll get a lead that like, oh, if you run ads from an influencer's account, that's been working really well for us. I might try it. It might work really well for me too, or it might tank and mean nothing. But at least I try to gain as much information as I can and constantly be trying different strategies. And it's just this constant game of like, you know, attacking different strategies and keeping that ROI where you need it to be, you know?
Right. In all your different things and the brands that you've worked on and everything, have you ever worked in anything with tech?
No, not other than just investments, you know, never actually hands-on whatsoever.
Gotcha.
But I think it's obviously where all the, you know, there's a lot of action there. And I think, man, if you can crack something there, like there's a lot of action, you know? Because not only is there like, it's where the attention's at, it's where the people are, but like, it's where the money, it's where the buyers are, and it's where the, you know, people that could one day buy your company for hundreds of millions of dollars. There's a lot of that going on in that world, you know?
Definitely.
It's exciting. All right, man, this was great. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for the questions were great. Everything was great. And you're just like, I think that you obviously, like, you're just a hungry dude, you know what I mean? And you obviously have the, like, you have the willpower to shift not only where you live so dramatically, which is important, but also your plan and your personal brand and what you stand for and whatever. Like, just trust those instincts and like make it happen, you know?
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, man. Thanks for doing this. Yeah.